Forget your typical dysfunctional family drama. HBO's Succession offers a chillingly accurate portrayal of what happens when extreme narcissism runs rampant at the helm of a media empire. This isn't just about wealth and power, it's a deep dive into the psychological battlefield of the Roy family, where every interaction is a strategic move to assert dominance and protect fragile egos. In this video, we'll expose the unsettling reality of their deeply ingrained narcissistic personalities and the devastating impact they have on everyone in their orbit. Hi, it's Captain Spoiler here, overthinking pop culture, and we're about to dive deep into spoiler territory, so consider yourself warned. Succession not only allows us to take a look behind the scenes of the lives of fabulously wealthy billionaires who fight each other over power, but also paints a poignant portrait of a narcissistic family in which chaotic attempts to win the approval of a strict father have replaced love and mutual care. From Logan's malignant control to Kendall's vulnerable grandiosity, Shiv's covert power plays, and Roman's antagonistic charm, each Roy family member embodies different types of narcissistic traits.
But Dad's gonna try and win at therapy.
Well, he hasn't done therapy with me yet. I'm an expert.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, this is what it looks like when you resolve all your issues.
A personality disorder is a certain abnormal and deep-rooted behavioral pattern in which a person's characteristics, way of thinking, and behavior cause extensive difficulties in relationships with other people in the world. In the case of narcissistic personality disorder, these problems center around a distorted sense of self-worth. Narcissists carry a deep-seated belief that they are worthless. They need the attention and approval of those around them, as they sense that this will fill the hole they carry within themselves. Therefore, their relationships with other people and their behavior towards the world are often aimed at drawing attention to themselves, evoking admiration, respect, or fear, creating visions of greatness and grandeur around themselves, or striving to achieve a position in life that will involve being admired on a daily basis. At the same time, narcissists can have problems building valuable relationships with other people because they're very focused on themselves and their image. They also lack empathy and find it difficult to open up to others. They can be charming and make an impression on others, but their relationships with people are rather superficial and transactional, and they might resort to various types of manipulation. Narcissism is often a response to various traumas from early childhood and is related to how a person is treated by their parents or guardians. It can be associated with experiencing psychological or physical violence, manipulation, various types of neglect, excessive criticism, or humiliation in childhood. This kind of treatment makes it difficult to develop a healthy self-esteem. Instead, the child may feel worthless and feel that they have to earn their parents' acceptance, interest, or love through certain behavior instead of just being worthy of it. Growing up in such conditions can severely disrupt the perception of oneself, other people, and the understanding of what relationships are like. And in response to all of this, narcissistic personality disorder can be developed. Everything we know about the childhood of the characters in Succession fits this pattern. The early years of Logan Roy are shrouded in mystery, but even what we know is disturbing. We have learned that Logan lost his parents at a very young age and was sent to live with his uncle, who was very quick-tempered and critical. We know that he has scars on his back, probably from physical punishments at the hands of his uncle. And we know that all his life, Logan blamed himself for the death of his younger sister, whom he probably infected with polio when he returned from boarding school, something that his uncle and aunt encouraged him to believe. We can assume that this kind of treatment and the losses he experienced as a very young child could have disturbed his emotional development and contributed to the malformation of his personality.
I blame myself. I spoiled you. And now, you're fucked.
Of all the types of narcissism, Logan Roy embodies malignant narcissism the most. This type of narcissism is particularly popular in films and TV shows because it goes well with the villain character. A malignant narcissist is often a person who lacks empathy for others, is Machiavellian, stubborn, and prone to abuse or exploit others. These traits can be useful in business, and in some way help us understand how the poor boy from nowhere that Logan Roy once was managed to build a huge media empire from scratch and achieve such a high social status. Throughout the series, we see that Logan will stop at nothing to get what he wants and will crush anyone who gets in his way, even his own children. A malignant narcissist can sometimes also have some psychopathic tendencies, has no problem straight up lying, does not care about social norms, and will consciously and without hesitation break them whenever it suits him. We see this approach to business in Logan, for example, when he tries to manipulate the president, but also in his relationship with his children, since he can openly deny he promised them something when it is no longer convenient for him. His relationships with other people, including his children, are very transactional. Other people serve Logan as pawns in the game or resources to be exploited. As long as they do what Logan expects, they can count on his favor. But whoever stands up to him exposes himself to Logan's terrifying wrath, becomes his enemy, and must reckon with Logan's desire to destroy him. Logan needs to win and cannot stand opposition. He takes differences of opinion or disobedience very personally, as a threat to the larger-than-life persona he has created to protect his sensitive and painful ego. For this reason, Logan has an enormous need to control his environment. His quick temper, ruthlessness, and the position he has built up have given him absolute power, not only in the company but also in the family. Everyone is afraid of him and tries to fulfill his wishes before he even expresses them. And Logan is very comfortable with this position, so much so that the entire plot of the series revolves around the fact that the aging Logan refuses to retire and hand over control of the company to the younger generation. Logan knows this would also mean he would lose his position as absolute ruler in his family. He would have to give up control, but also lose the respect and admiration associated with this role. And he cannot allow that to happen.
You know, my guy says that if Dad had had therapy, I wouldn't need so much.
My guy's surprised I got through it at all.
I'm not sure you did make it through it all.
I don't think you need to see. I will have you know I am very well adjusted. You're just good at hiding it.
When Logan became a father himself, his narcissism severely affected his children. Throughout the series, we see what a strict, unpredictable, and unapproachable father Logan is to his adult children. He is unable to give them his unconditional care and affection. He only shows them interest and favor when they obey him and do exactly what he wants. He plays them off against each other and forces them to compete, because as long as they are fighting each other, they will not be able to stand up to him or threaten him in any way. It probably all started when his children were young, as suggested by the intro to the series. In it, young Roys seem very lonely, and rather than really enjoying themselves, they seem to play the role of well-dressed and well-behaved children doing posh stuff, and they look at their unapproachable father from afar and with fear. And over the course of the series, we are led to believe that at least one of them experienced physical violence at the hands of their father, with the rest witnessing it. All 4 of Logan's children have been under his undivided influence from a young age, and their mothers seem to have been pushed into the background and were probably not present in their lives to such an extent as to be able to protect their children from the destructive influence of their narcissistic father. All we really know about Logan's first wife and Connor's mother is that she was placed in a psychiatric hospital when her son was still a small child. We can only guess that the relationship with the controlling and violent Logan pushed her to the brink of her endurance or exacerbated some other mental health issues she may have had before. Caroline, the mother of the other 3, seems to be a bit narcissistic herself, and she is certainly very distant towards her children, both emotionally and literally. Logan and Caroline divorced when their children were in their early teens, and since then, Ken, Shiv, and Roman have been under the sole care of their father, while their mother has stayed in the UK. Caroline seems completely uninterested in her children, has no relationship with them, withdraws when Ken tries to open up to her, and at the same time has no problem saying horrible and hurtful things to her daughter.
Truth is, I probably should never have had children. I should have had dogs.
Even though Caroline was present for the first few years of the 3 younger Roy children's lives, she does not appear to be someone who could protect the children from their father in any way. On the contrary, it is likely that she herself also caused them quite a few emotional problems. Growing up in such conditions, all of Logan's children eventually developed narcissistic personalities, although each of them manifested it in a slightly different way.
Hey, if you want to print something in your little book, you may print the following line. Connor Roy was interested in politics at a very young age.
Logan's eldest son is a grandiose narcissist. He compensates for his low self-esteem by creating an aura of uniqueness around him. He wants to be seen as intelligent, sophisticated, and well-informed, as a man who is a patron of the arts. At the same time, he is the most eccentric of the whole family, living on a desert ranch, baking his own bread, giving passionate opinions on environmental protection, which are completely at odds with the Republican views of the rest of the family, and he gives the impression of someone who feels superior to others because of his beliefs. However, it is hard not to get the feeling that his interest in these topics is rather superficial and inconsistent, that Connor does not really have his own well-founded views, but rather follows whatever he hears in the media and considers trendy. Connor is the invisible child among the Roy family. When his father remarried and started a new family, Connor was pushed into the background a little, and the age difference has always kept him at a distance from his younger siblings. Connor is literally Logan's eldest son, but he is not treated as such. He is not even considered as his possible successor, which makes him feel that he does not occupy his rightful place in the family. Connor tries very hard to please his father, but he is not taken seriously by him or anyone else. Perhaps this is why Connor projects this image and cares so much about how he is perceived by others. He wants to surround himself with beauty and luxury and confirm his position with external status symbols. Connor tries to convince himself that he is special and wants to be recognized. At the same time, he is rather detached from reality, even for a billionaire family. All these elements come together in his decision to run for president of the United States. Connor has no real chance of winning and is not qualified enough. Yet, in his delusion and self-importance, he seems to believe that he can actually pull it off. Connor's devotion to his image as a sophisticated elite person is particularly evident when, for a completely trivial reason that disturbs his perfect vision of the party he is organizing, he throws a tantrum and starts firing employees during the event.
Hey! The butter's too cold! The butter is too cold! The butter's all fucked! Now you fuck watching, you fucked it! There's dinner rolls ripping out there as we speak!
Connor!
I am a laughing stock! Complacent! You're fired! You're all fired! Idiots!
Connor's relationship with his girlfriend, Willa, perfectly illustrates how transactional the relationships of narcissistic people can be. Willa is a call girl, and Connor literally pays her to spend time with him and then become his girlfriend and fiancé. There is no love there. He wants a beautiful woman by his side, and she is not particularly excited about spending the rest of her life with him, but the money and opportunities that this relationship opens up to her ultimately win her over. It is hard to say whether Connor realizes how unconventional their relationship is and that Willa does not really love him, but we can see that he considers himself such a good catch that he takes Willa's doubts about marrying him as a personal insult. In the end, although Connor is a rather eccentric character and his narcissism, privilege, and detachment from reality are obvious, he seems to be a quite decent person compared to the rest of the family, who are driven by revenge and sibling rivalry.
The truth is that my father is a malignant presence, a bully and a liar. This is the day his reign ends.
Kendall Roy is the main character of the show, and, at least in the first seasons, we as viewers are supposed to support him in his confrontation with Logan. It all starts when Ken, who has been groomed to succeed his father in the company for a long time, is denied what he was promised. His father does not retire, and the company is not passed on to Ken. In the natural course of events, Kendall positions himself in our eyes as a victim of his father's decision. And this first, crucial plot twist sets the dynamics of the father-son relationship for the rest of the series. Ken is obsessed with proving to his father that he is worthy of replacing him, and the father consistently despises him, pushes him away, and throws obstacles in his way. It is not only Logan who does not take Kendall seriously. Even though Ken tries very hard to present himself to the world as a capable businessman and a worthy successor to his father, those around him treat him like a spoiled brat, like a child of a great father who is not able to live up to him and would not have achieved anything in life without his family name.
Do we need to sweeten the offer?
You want to bump the offer another point? Do you want to call your dad?
Do I want to call my dad? No, I don't want to call my dad.
This makes Kendall feel terrible because it hits him where it hurts. And throughout the series, Ken makes increasingly erratic decisions and takes more and more drastic measures to prove to his father, the world, and himself that he is capable of achieving something on his own. It all fits perfectly with the type of narcissism that Kendall seems to represent. Ken shows signs of vulnerable narcissism. In his case, low self-esteem and need for approval come to the surface and are visible at first glance. Ken tries to deal with this by pretending to be more confident than he is, But this often makes him look like a poser, and it is clear that his confidence is fake and insincere. On the other hand, Kendall also uses drugs, sometimes to get pumped up and look better in the eyes of others, and sometimes to suppress difficult feelings and his sense of worthlessness. Vulnerable narcissists often have low self-esteem, are insecure, resentful, while also being able to exploit their shortcomings to get attention. They like to play the victim and exaggerate their failures to arouse sympathy and thus manipulate others. We can see this in Kendall's decisions when he openly and publicly opposes his father and tries to take the company away from him. Having failed to get recognition and love from his father, he smoothly slips into the role of Logan's victim, showing the whole world how unfairly his father treated him and trying to build his social capital on evoking sympathy. Kendall plays the victim card many times in the series and wallows in his misfortunes. Yet, at the same time, it must be acknowledged that he is indeed being mistreated by his father. Of all Logan's children, he seems the most broken, perhaps partly because he refuses to stop fighting. If not for Logan's love and recognition, then with Logan himself trying to bring him down. The combination of his great need to be accepted and prove himself with his deep hurt and sense of injustice make his relationship with his father and the people around him very turbulent. Although Kendall wants to get closer to his father, he is unable to build a close relationship with anyone else. This is evident in his interactions with his ex-wife and children, as he is unable to connect with them. And this is also true of his relationships with women he dates. He throws himself into relationships with them, maybe because he wants to fill a void in himself, yet he cannot overcome a certain barrier to emotional intimacy, and his relationships with women remain superficial. Of all the Roy children, Kendall seems to have the most symptoms of complex trauma associated with prolonged stress caused by being raised by a deeply narcissistic father. Or at least he is the one most eager to present these symptoms to the world.
Excuse me, would it be cool? Because I have something very secret in my pants. Would it be okay to show, please? Or is that a trigger warning?
Jesus, Roman, you're a walking fucking lawsuit.
At first glance, it's Roman who seems to be the most disturbed of all Logan's children. He is very chaotic in his behavior, can be very cruel in his words, but also very anxious. He has something of both the abuser and the victim in him. He likes to shock, constantly violating taboos and referring to sex in a graphic way, while also having enormous problems with his sexuality. In Roman, two types of narcissism are combined, malignant and vulnerable. He takes after his father in many ways, openly manipulating others. He is an opportunist, and his behavior and words are often characterized by arrogant grandeur and sharp, biting malice. But at the same time, he also has clear moments of weakness, in which he might want to reveal himself and open up, but is immediately overcome with shame, which triggers an automatic reaction to mask this with arrogance or stupid jokes. There is a lot of suffering in Roman, but at the same time, he denies his sensitivity, downplays it, tries to cover it up with jokes, and playing the role of the family clown. It is clear that Roman does not fully believe in himself, but unlike Kendall, he does not try to fight this self-image most of the time. Instead, he accepts it as a given and resigns himself to playing the role of the family loser, the weirdo who can't do anything right and who is better off not being entrusted with important tasks. Even when he gets the chance to prove himself, in the end, he expects to fail anyway. Roman's relationship with his father is marked on the one hand by a desire for approval, and on the other by enormous fear. At several points in the series, we are led to believe that Logan may have been physically violent towards Roman when he was a boy. Now that he is an adult, we see that Logan can still hit him, and Roman's reaction clearly shows that he is used to being treated in this way. He downplays the issue and tries to justify his father, even after he has a tooth knocked out. Of all Logan's children, Roman is most afraid of speaking up against his father, possibly because from an early age he experienced his anger and dissatisfaction firsthand. All this means that Roman, although talkative and attractive, has great difficulty in establishing relationships with people, including on a sexual level. It is clear that he struggles with his sexuality. He talks a lot about sex and likes to shock others with it. But at the same time, he has problems finding fulfillment. For example, he demands that his girlfriend play dead in bed, or he engages in a secret, humiliation-based affair with a much older woman from the company. He does not feel comfortable in a relationship as an equal partner in sex, and his relationships are all about domination. He either treats the other person as an object, or he has to feel humiliated and degraded himself. Perhaps this is related to Roman's experiences of violence and physical punishment. Or maybe there is something more to it, since the series vaguely suggests that as a child, Roman may have been molested by someone from his father's circle. While at first glance it seems that Kendall is the one who suffered the most at the hands of Logan, it is quite possible that Roman was the one who experienced the most violence and abuse as a child.
Oh, hello? Is this the replicant department? Yeah, my meat puppet has stopped working.
Shiv.
When we first meet her, Shiv seems somewhat distant from the rest of the family. Instead of getting involved in business like everyone else and taking on a role in her father's media empire, Shiv works in politics, campaigning for a Democratic senator. It's almost as if Shiv was a rebellious child, as if she deliberately went against everything her family stands for and the values they live by. In fact, Shiv often criticizes and even disdains the content that is presented in the media owned by Waystar Royco and wants to present herself as someone who is above all that. Shiv claims that she wants to deal with more serious matters and make a real difference in the world. And in doing so, she gives the impression that she somehow feels morally superior to the rest of the family, all of whom are immersed in a world of propaganda media and crude entertainment. Shiv's attitude may suggest that Logan's only daughter is a communal narcissist. People with this type of narcissism want to protect their fragile ego and gain the recognition of others by building a persona of someone who is socially committed, supports good causes, and helps others. But although they are indeed involved in pro-social activities, it is not due to empathy or genuine concern, but rather the need to be admired. Pro-social activities allow such people to feel better about themselves, to believe that others think well of them, accept them as members of a group, admire their commitment. This allows them to feel better than others, to demonstrate moral superiority, and Shiv does this very often. At the same time, communal narcissists often behave very differently in their actual relationships with people than their image would suggest. They can be overly demanding, critical, unfair, and exploitative. Like other narcissists, they have trouble establishing close, deep relationships based on mutual care. This can be seen in Shiv's relationship with Tom, her boyfriend, and later fiancé and husband. Shiv shows interest in him mainly when she needs him for something. She expects him to submit to her and to play the role of a pawn in her games with the family. Tom is a tool for her to gain influence in the family and in the company. At the same time, Shiv can be very cruel to him.
I'm just not sure I'm a good fit for a monogamous marriage.
Yeah, I kind of wish, I guess maybe we talked about this before our wedding night.
She has no problem cheating on him, betraying him, or plotting against him. Like a typical narcissist, she is willing to go through anyone to get what she wants, even at the expense of her husband and seemingly ally. Of all her siblings, Shiv seems to have the closest, least problematic relationship with her father. For a long time, she seems to be his favorite, a golden child who is given more freedom. Maybe it's because she is the only daughter and the youngest child. Maybe she reminds Logan of his younger sister in some way. Or perhaps the father sees something of himself in her, since of all Logan's children, Shiv seems to be the most ruthless, devoid of empathy and cunning, just like her father, constantly plotting, planning, and craving for real power. In a way, Logan idealizes her and puts her on a pedestal, but that doesn't mean that Shiv is completely safe and immune to his anger and dissatisfaction. She can easily fall from that pedestal if her father notices her defiance. At the same time, it seems that Logan does not take Shiv seriously. Although she behaves most like her father, she is not perceived as a real threat. This may be because in his patriarchal world, it is difficult to imagine that such a young woman could challenge him. Being a pretty young woman who has also tried to distance herself from her controversial family is a kind of camouflage for Shiv, making others underestimate her, which makes them more susceptible to her influence and machinations.
Look, here's the thing about being rich, okay? It's fucking great. Okay? It's like being a superhero, only better.
While viewers are left wondering which of the siblings will ultimately take over from Logan, another initially inconspicuous character is always playing his cards right in the background, climbing higher and higher up the corporate ladder and ingratiating himself to Logan, or perhaps even following his path in some way. The new addition to the family and the company, Tom Wambsgans, enters the scene through his relationship with Shiv. We know that he is a boy from nowhere, an outsider from a family with no wealth, and that he is very good at seizing opportunities when they arise. Much like Logan in the past, Tom is involved with a woman from a rich and influential family, And this relationship turns out to be a springboard for him, not only to a better life, but also to ever-increasing power. Tom initially seems harmless, but only because he does not make any sudden moves, instead constantly calculating what will pay off for him. Undeterred by the fact that family looks down on him and that nobody respects him, he consistently tries to get closer to Logan, to impress him, and to prove himself to him. At times, he seems pathetic. Sometimes we even feel sorry for him. Yet Tom will do a lot to gain more and more power for himself. He is willing to put up with being humiliated by Shiv and her family. He risks going to prison by getting involved in the company's most problematic schemes. And in the end, he is even willing to betray his own wife, lie and deceive her, and make a move behind her back. In the end, it is Tom who wins the game for Logan's inheritance, because he is probably the one who most resembles him, ruthless, calculating, making the most ambitious, long-term, and clever plans. Yet no one pays any attention to him, which is precisely what makes him so dangerous. Is Tom also a narcissist? Surely there are some indications. Time and again, we see how strongly he is focused on himself, on his position, but also on whether he will be accepted by Logan and whether he can satisfy him. We can see how he focuses on the superficial aspects of his image, how important status symbols and wealth are to him. His relationships with others are very transactional. We can see how he can exploit them and even turn the tables on Logan himself by pretending that he doesn't really want anything from him. Tom's relationship toward people is very calculated. It is no coincidence that he proposes to Shiv when she is going through a difficult time, when her father is in hospital and it is not clear whether he will survive. It isn't an expression of respect for Logan, as Tom wants to present it, rather an attempt to take advantage of Shiv's moment of weakness and to claim his position in the family on the eve of key decisions regarding power in the company. Tom plays the others like a master, creating the persona of a somewhat vulnerable narcissist, which allows him to fool everyone around him. At the same time, there is something of a malignant narcissist in him too, a ruthlessness, a cynical exploitation of others, and cruelty towards the weak. Much about Tom is revealed in the way he treats those over whom he has some kind of authority in the company. Tom's interactions with people higher up than him are full of deceit, as he tries to play a role that will help him achieve his goal. Only in his relationships with the weaker ones does Tom show his true colors without any inhibitions. All unpleasant things he experiences from the Roy family, he passes on further down the ladder, spiced up even more. He takes it out on his subordinates, ridicules them cruelly, and is physically violent towards them. Just like for Logan, for Tom, principles and common decency do not exist, unless he can use them for his own purposes. And like Logan, Tom hates it when someone opposes him or challenges his authority, to which he reacts very aggressively. However, Tom has an advantage over the other characters, as he is not devoid of emotional intelligence. Quite the contrary, he can use it to secure his position. He is able to refrain from reacting in the presence of those stronger than himself, whom he wants to win over, and he can use their own emotional states against them and to his own advantage. The ability to understand emotions, both his own and those of other people, allows him to act more effectively and to play a secret, long-term game, which makes Tom all the more dangerous.
This whole family is a nest of vipers. They'll wrap themselves around you, and they'll suffocate you.
Succession is full of characters who behave horribly and do morally questionable things, but it doesn't always have to be the result of a narcissistic personality disorder. In order to survive in the orbit of the Roy family and on such a high level of power in this media conglomerate governed by a fearsome boss, you have to be able to adapt. Those around the Roy family can be divided into 3 categories: those who are broken by their relationship with the Roys, those who are useful to them, and those who consciously try to get something out of this toxic yet lucrative environment. Some of the most memorable characters are from the latter group, such as Caroline, who won't think twice about throwing their own children under the bus to get money from Logan, or Marcia, Logan's third wife, who tries to get the most out of this marriage and secure a financial future for herself and her son from a previous relationship. Not to mention Jerry and other high-ranking Waystar Royco employees who have to learn ruthlessness in order to keep their jobs and deal with Logan and his entitled children. But by far the most interesting among these background characters is the young cousin Greg, who, encouraged by his mother, tries to get a job in his uncle's corporation. In a sense, we see the world through his eyes. He is the real outsider who is confronted with and increasingly drawn into this exaggerated, toxic, absurd world of narcissistic rich people. And it is precisely through Greg's example that we see how much such an environment can seduce and corrupt at the same time, and how much one must develop a thick skin and find the willingness to accept terrible behavior in order to survive and succeed there. Greg is, in a sense, Tom from the past, and we see him becoming more and more like Tom as time goes by, adopting his views and behavior. However, while Tom has been playing his game from the start, it seems that Greg does not have the same corrupt nature at first. He seems rather vulnerable, even helpless, and as viewers, we are a little worried about where he will end up once his family and the corporation have had their way with him. Greg's example shows that you don't have to have a personality disorder to find a dark side in yourself. Even though Succession has been praised for the multi-layered and nuanced way it portrays narcissistic personality disorder, it is worth remembering that it is also a series about a very specific environment that forces a certain level of narcissistic behavior and can corrupt even people without any disorders. Thanks for watching. If you like this analysis, don't forget to subscribe and check out this awesome video next.